let's talk about mixed ability classrooms. Hi, my name is Dr. Ken Beatty, and I'm a professor of education and a textbook writer. And I'm very interested in the idea of mixed ability classrooms. It's a big topic, so we're going to break it down into 4 smaller topics. Right now, what I'd like to do is talk about defining the mixed ability classroom, and then after that, we'll explore 7 different aspects, factors that make a difference among our students and make them a little more able or a little less able in the classroom. Okay, let's begin with a definition of a mixed ability classroom. Actually, we all have them. They're so common. We always have classes in which there are some students who we say are more able and some who are less able, with most of the students in the middle. Some students understand instantly or very, very quickly. They grasp the concepts, they learn the vocabulary, the grammar, the structures, everything else. And some students struggle down with those same things, trying to grasp them, putting in extra time maybe, but seemingly unable to meet the same level. What do we need to do? Well, we need strategies to cope with this, because if we just teach to try to help the lowest level students, then the upper level students become bored. And if we address our teaching to the highest level students, then sometimes the others get left behind. As teachers, we're responsible for everyone. So, first of all, let's try to understand the 7 factors that make differences among our students. These are ones that are commonly described in the literature. The first one is culture. The second is the student's first language. Third is maturity. 4th, aptitude. 5th, intelligence. The 6th one is learning style. And finally, autonomy. Let's look at these each one at a time. 1. Culture. Culture has to do with the background of the student in terms of learning. Now, every student that comes to our classes has had some prior learning experiences. Even a young kindergarten child has learned some things about language from his or her parents and peers. So they come into the classroom with certain expectations of how learning should take place. If students come from another grade, another teacher, they'll still have some small expectations about what goes on in the classroom. But when these same students come from another culture altogether, where the methods of teaching and learning are different, that can make an impact on our classroom. If you add to that they're learning English for the first time, it can create some issues and some problems. So we have to look out for that. In practical terms, what can we do? Well, certainly we have to start by asking the students and trying to find out about their own culture. How did you learn before? How did your teacher do this last year? What are the ways you like to learn the best? These are all questions that we can ask. The second point has to do with the student's first language. First language makes a difference when you are learning English because of many smaller issues. 1, do the students come from a language in which the alphabet is the same? So, for example, coming from one of the languages of Europe, French, German, Spanish, where they have the same alphabet. Or does the student come from perhaps Asia or the Middle East, where the system of writing is different? And that's an added level of difficulty for the students. If you look in some cultures, such as in the Middle East, they also write in a direction that is opposite to that in which we write in English. All of this can add to a lot of confusion for students. So the student's first language has an impact, not just on the things I've mentioned, but also in terms of grammar and vocabulary. In terms of vocabulary, students will have many of the same words, but may be learning new ones, depending on where you're teaching. So in some cases, it's really just about translation, where they're trying to take the ideas they already have and learn the new words for it. But in other cases, the grammar can be quite different. So, for example, a Spanish speaker or a French speaker puts the adjective after the noun. Where we say something like a white house, they're going to say a house white. It's just changing the order. Understanding the student's first language helps us to better address their needs and spot the difference between errors and mistakes. What's that? What's the difference? An error is something that students do repetitively. They constantly make errors because they think that it's correct. A mistake is just when they make a little misspeak. They say something wrong, but it's just a momentary thing, and it's probably not deserving of correction. It's difficult for students to take so much correction in the second language classroom. The third point is maturity. Although we have students of all different ages, in our classrooms, even if they are the same age, quite often there are some differences in maturity. Now, maturity refers in this case to the willingness to learn, and it's very much related to ideas around motivation. We are all interested in something. And when we're interested in something, we give it our full attention. Now, students who are less mature in the language classroom are perhaps not motivated to learn. Why? Perhaps they don't see the reason for doing so. It might be that some of the reasons are too far off. We can tell them, oh yes, learn English. It will be great for work, but that's many years away from now. Or for travel, they're not going to have the chance to travel. Or for education, maybe they don't see themselves going to university. This is all sort of barriers in terms of motivation. So we need to find other motivations. For example, finding ways to let students talk about the things that they know, that they're familiar with, and that they're interested in. Fourth is aptitude. Aptitude refers to a student's natural ability to learn a language. Now, we recognize that different people have more or less aptitude for learning a language. Who learns the best? Someone who's already learned a second language. Learning a third language or fourth language has been shown to be much easier for them. It doesn't mean that anyone cannot learn a language because they have low aptitude. In fact, they can. It just means that they need to have a little more help. Teachers provide that help in the form of strategies, ways that can help those students learn on their own or while they're studying that will help them get through the materials. Students who do not develop strategies on their own have low aptitude, and we need to really push them along by giving them those strategies. The fifth one is intelligence. Intelligence relates to the idea of whether or not the student is smart enough to learn a language. Personally, I don't believe it. It's commonly cited in the literature, but really, when you think about it, everyone learned their first language, so why can't they learn a second language? We may say that some students seem to be much smarter, and those that are often exposed to more input, more language input. So, for example, they may be more interested in reading. They may be more interested in listening to people. Again, a lot of this question around intelligence goes back to motivation. And we have to find ways to help those students who might be labeled less intelligent, those who don't do as well in their other school subjects, to become more interested in learning a language. How do we do that? Well, one of the big secrets is presenting the information in different ways. So we can offer the students sometimes some games, language games, to get them more interested in learning. This is the sort of strategy that teachers use to make sure that everyone is engaged, not just the more able students in the classroom. The sixth item is learning styles. Learning styles is a very popular topic, and everyone discusses their own learning styles. I prefer to learn by reading. No, I prefer to learn by watching. I prefer by doing something in a practical way. Everyone is going to have a slightly different way. And this relates to some work that was done by Howard Gardner, a psychologist at Harvard University. Howard Gardner was interested in what he calls multiple intelligences. And he recognizes that different people are really good at different things. And some of those are kinesthetic, for example, throwing a ball or playing a sport. Some are musical. Some are spatial, people who are sculptors, for example. Some are visual, like painters and people who draw very well. And he said that we too often measure intelligence in people simply based upon knowledge of something or their ability to solve certain problems. Well, this is spilled into the idea of people having learning preferences. And people seem to think that they will learn better if they can simply read the materials, or if they can simply hear the materials, or some other way. But in fact, recent research has shown that this is not necessarily so. However, what we do know is that students respond very well to a variety of task types. So this is why we should find opportunities to do something different in our classrooms, particularly mixed ability classrooms, such as getting students involved in drama, a little bit of a play, or some kind of skits that they can do. When we introduce new activities into the classroom, it allows some students who do have those different intelligences to bring them to the foreground. Maybe a less able student is not very comfortable in the language, but they're a great actor. That sort of student is going to really respond and increase their motivation for the course because they are happy to be there. The seventh and final factor has to do with autonomy. Autonomy is the ability to work on your own. Again, it relates to those strategies we've talked about a little bit already. When you have strategies for autonomy, you can say to yourself, all right, I'm going to find my own ways to learn something about this topic. Now, everyone has autonomy, and everyone has something they're really interested in, something that they learn on their own. It might be like playing soccer or football. And the student who's really interested in that will read the magazines, will watch the games on television, will play himself, will talk to his friends about it, and gets a lot of information coming in. If we can convert that same kind of interest into a student who wants to read, write, listen, and speak, they can have those autonomous skills that will carry them throughout their lifetimes. We can't always be there as teachers for our students when they have questions. We recognize that students need to learn on their own. Autonomy is the secret to doing that. But it's not just looking for opportunities to learn on your own. It's also the discipline of doing it when you need to. All right, so we've looked at a short definition of the mixed ability classroom, and we've examined 7 factors that make a difference among our more able students and our less able students. In the next talks, I'd like to look just at lower level students, those with less ability in the classroom. those less able students need our very particular attention to bring them up to the level of the rest of the class. And as we mentioned before, one of the key things is motivation.